biggest cut through in my experience so far, and what is really a future trend, is personalisation. Gone are the days where you can take a list of 7,000 people and send them the same EDN. People don't respond that way. That speaks to the analysis and the data. What gets people clicking and opening is when they see themselves, or it's actually tailored to them.
Welcome to Content Matters, where we go behind the scenes of content in high-stakes industries. Today, I'm talking with Laura Buck, who's the director at the Royal Children's Hospital Foundation in Melbourne. We're going to be diving into what's changed her, what's challenged her, but also how she always delivers impact in 5 minutes. Laura, your Good Friday appeal last year raised more than $23 million, and the funds that you raised go towards more than 200 projects for the hospital and regional paediatric care. Is that correct?
Yes, we are so grateful to be the sole beneficiary of the Good Friday appeal, which is close to 95 years in the making. And we are thrilled to share that across many different projects. In addition to that, the foundation also raised funds as part of our fundraising program. Last year, we came close to over $40 million. So a combination of over $60 million going to the hospital.
That's an incredible achievement. I would love to hear about a moment early on in a ward or a waiting room or a family conversation. What's a moment that's changed the way that you work?
Yeah, I love this question. Reflecting on someone who has changed me would have been a beautiful family who I met in my very early days, about 7 years ago, when I first came to the Royal Children's Hospital Foundation. I had just come into a role and merged two teams together. This family was a grateful patient family, and they weren't particularly happy because there wasn't a project that fitted where they wanted to fund an incredible amount raised. So it didn't start off on the best foot. My ethos is really to connect in person, always on or at the donor's house or environment. So I went out to their place. It was about an hour to an hour and a half drive. I remember driving out there thinking, wow, this is really far away from the hospital itself. I sat in their kitchen table after receiving a bit of a tour from their incredible home and thinking, oh gosh, this family's obviously so lucky and privileged. They've got this beautiful house and they live in a beautiful area. And sitting there talking to the mum, everything changed. It wasn't what it seemed. They had actually been on this tumultuous journey. Their child had catastrophic epilepsy, and once it developed, was seizing almost every hour and was a long stay member of our ICU. During this period, they were lucky enough to be home for about a 2-week period before their child had another seizure. Their whole life was turned upside down. The child had other siblings. But I just remember sitting at that table and thinking, I've come in here with this assumption that they have this incredible check and beautiful life. They're actually going through the hardest thing that any parent has to face. It was so humbling sitting at the table. Ultimately, what transpired is that incredible family used those funds where I was able to connect them to the head of neurology and fund a home EEG. Up to 50 families in the first year of that funding receive home tracking. So it would be an EEG machine at home. It meant if a child had a seizure, they could actually monitor it at home, check in with the doctors. Depending on how long or how extreme it was, they could actually stay at home and continue to be a family. That just meant so much. And still to this day, we keep in touch. It was divine timing, actually, because it was in my first few months here, in my first role before I stepped into my current role. It's something I always think of, to meet such an extreme situation. They didn't know for years to come what the solution was, but they're still out there raising funds and trying to make it better for the rest of the children dealing with that catastrophic epilepsy. It was just incredible.
Looking back at that story and that moment in which you were out in the field talking to donors and families, How would you sum up maybe those three things that you learnt? Would it be, for example, that judgment needs to be left at the front door, that you really advocate for children to get more care at home, not necessarily in a hospital setting? Or was it also around how much stories make a difference to the actual fundraising that happens as well?
Yeah, I think for me, it was hearing stories firsthand, going out to the donor. Sometimes in great foundations where you have a fantastic place that you can bring your donors to, like we do, it's easy to always bring people to us. But I think going out to meet the donor is the first and foremost. The other is listening. As someone who's incredibly enthusiastic and always wanting to chat, it was a big lesson for me to just sit back and actively listen and really hear, letting go of everything you think you know before you meet a donor and understanding that every single person has a story. We can relate to that in any way, but we've got to sit there and listen to them first.
Incredible. In past conversations we've had, you've mentioned this phrase, impact in 5 minutes. Can you explain to the listeners what that is?
In this day, donors are so savvy. There's no such thing anymore as here's a check, do what you want with it. They want to know where their funds are going and how their funds are going. I am a big believer of let's tell them straight away. So what do we do? Always having your elevator pitch, which could be a couple of minutes of we are working alongside the hospital to change the future of children's health, where in a world all children can thrive. And what are we going to do with these funds? Are they going to sponsor a bed in a ward? Are they going towards an advanced therapies project where we are in effect trying to change the genes of a child to prevent them from having a disease or progressing that disease? It's so important to just get straight to where their funds are going. People want to know and they really want to be a part of the journey. It's through that impact in 5 minutes that you can really do that and pique their interest. If it's not that, then it might be something else. You are keeping their time precious and letting them know where their funds are going.
It sounds like it's all about being specific. And from what I'm hearing, it started out as a realization that you had about your audience, but then also not just a practical strategy, it also maybe is a bit of a responsibility that you feel.
Absolutely. We need ultimate transparency. There's been multitudes of media and stories about charities not being transparent with where their funds go. We are incredibly privileged at the Royal Children's Hospital Foundation to be able to say that 100% of all of our donations go to the hospital. And I think that's something that we always need to lead with. Of course, there are charities out there who need to have administration costs, and I absolutely believe in that too. It's not necessarily about the cost that it takes to fundraise or provide a service. It's about the transparency that comes with that.
Have you ever felt demotivated at work or maybe a bit uneasy about something? Would you like to share what that might have been and what it taught you?
For me and my team, we are in a privileged position where we get to hear a lot of stories, but sometimes those stories can be really hard. I'll never forget returning to work as a mum and seeing the hospital in a totally different light. Also having brought my daughter here in an emergency situation and being on the inside of what it is to be a mother, having an experience with my child where we are both in distress. I will never take that for granted. It comes sometimes in quite heavy ways. It's hearing the stories and then making a conscious effort to talk to someone afterwards, whether that be someone in your close circle at home, a colleague here. We have a really great training where we do grief and loss at the foundation. I would advocate that for any organisation. It's really a teacher of how to support someone grieving, but then also how to support yourself after that. Well-being is so important. And sometimes you can have a week where you're hearing quite a few stories firsthand or secondhand. It's really hard because not every story has a good ending. There's always work to do. We always need to raise funds. We are always solving problems here. Some weeks can be harder or heavier than others.
Yeah, that sounds really tough and admirable as well. Why don't we talk about a winning campaign? I'd love to ask you what's one piece of work that you're proud of.
It's hard to choose, but I've got an absolute favorite over the last year, and I'm also really proud of my team for delivering it. The elevator pitch is a doctor flying solo around Australia to raise funds to create a dedicated ward or centre here at the Royal Children's Hospital to provide advanced therapies. We did that with a very big team, a very dedicated team, and copious events and different pieces going out in terms of content, social media, daily captain's logs. We even had our incredible flying doctor, Professor Andrew Kornberg, filming a daily story where we could take that story out to the people who were avidly following it and ultimately change the lives of children. The campaign is still going to date, but we've raised just over 2 million of our $4.5 million goal. The way that we've produced this campaign while he was flying for the month of July is something I will be forever proud of. A moment that made me proud where I knew we were really successful as a team was we did a Q&A on Instagram. People could put in their questions, and then Andrew, whilst flying a plane, mind you, would answer these questions. You know, what is advanced therapies? He really had this long form way of answering and getting those questions back out to the people. I knew we had made it, or at least had a good reach, because we had someone call the Foundation General line and say, I missed the Q&A, can we please do another one? I missed it, I need to ask Andrew a question. Backed by popular demand, we did another, but it's just so amazing. I would never have thought at the beginning of the campaign, which might seem small, but someone would actually call us and demand to be back in some content we'd produced as part of that Q&A.
It's such a unique idea as a fundraising campaign and to build awareness and education around what you do. Surely that is one of many creative ideas that gets thrown about, like why that one? What are some other ideas that have done well or have flopped and been put in the bin?
It's funny, you block out failures because they don't come to mind as easy as your successes, that's for sure. But we have absolutely failed, tremendously many times. I think with my team and my leadership style, I have really learnt a few things, and that is you don't need to have the answer all the time. You need to surround yourself with experts, creative people, and passionate people, and you will find the answer together. Speaking of failures, the biggest failure that I can remember, or the biggest flop that's really stuck with me, is a campaign that we tried to do during COVID. We have this incredibly dedicated group of fundraisers. I was leading the management of that group at the time. We were calling them once a week as a welfare check just to say hi and check in. We had no idea what was going on. We were locked in our homes, sent home, couldn't even go into the office or come to the hospital. One of our members who leads that group too as a volunteer said, let's create these little triangle donation boxes, send them out to the group and they can fundraise in their community and still stay connected to us. We were so excited. We did it in conjunction with a digital newsletter, sent it all out. Everyone got their flat packs that they could build. I think we sent out 500 to 1,000 to all of the different groups and individuals. And boy, did we cop it. It landed so flatly. I think we had maybe 6 or 7 written letters, some handwritten letters expressing disappointment. We were locked down and couldn't really fundraise at that peak of COVID. Where we tried to connect with these stakeholders was their passion for fundraising in the hospital, but where we failed was to ask them if this was a good idea. As a leadership group, we thought it was a good idea, therefore we just did it. It was a huge learning to not ask the actual stakeholder or test a focus group or pick up the phone, presidents or groups, like, what do you think of this idea? Can I soundboard this off you? I'll never forget how badly that landed. The learning I take from it is to check in with stakeholders. If you are sending out a sensitive something that you can pull in some guidance from that specific person, whether that be a cultural donor or someone who is of that demographic, you should always pick up the phone and check with someone. That's what diversity and checking in with your donors is. and making sure you get that stakeholder engagement and feedback before you go too big and you can't come back from it.
Do you have a Rolodex of donors that you would call to test ideas with, or is it something you just wing it when the time comes?
I think it's really case by case. We are incredibly lucky to have such an unwavering group of dedicated supporters across all different spectrums of our fundraising and philanthropy here. There's not anyone that you couldn't pick up the phone and just test some thinking with. We also have an incredibly diverse group of staff here at the foundation. We could even call on members outside of the fundraising department and say, hey, what do you think about this? We've got this really exciting product coming out. We have been doing some product testing of it, and we have had a focus group of parents within the foundation that would use that product out in the wild. It actually fully shaped the product that we chose. There was about 3 different types we could choose from, and we brought them all in. There was about 10 of us. We even had one of our non-fundraisers from the philanthropy team come up with the tagline in that focus group, which we've used now. It's amazing what you can do by testing on a small group of the people you expect to use the product. I can't wait to see how that has potentially affected what we landed on and how it sells.
It sounds like a really smart way of investing critical donor funds, because you don't want to justify something that fell flat later that you'd spent money on. But if you spend a little bit of money just to check that it's hitting the right things, you're feeling more comfortable with scaling that and being able to share that message with the community.
Absolutely.
Other than getting valuable input and maybe some element of co-design in some of the campaigns, what other limitations would you say you're mindful of? Is it often no money, no time, or compliance, consent?
I think one thing that we always find challenging is patient heroes for campaigns, for direct marketing in particular. We run 2 incredible campaigns a year through tax time and Christmas. There's a real development period of creating that campaign. You could have in your mind what you think is the most heartwarming, beautiful, heartbreaking, special story that you want to share. And ultimately, it's not the story that the family want to tell. Respectfully, we just get that and we understand that, because you're actually talking to parents and asking them to relive the most traumatic moments of their lives. For instance, there are families that may not want to share photos or videos at the time when their child was extremely sick in hospital. And that is so hard, because you want to tell the story of them getting better or them at their worst so that people can relate and see themselves in these families who had a similar experience or want that insight. If the family isn't wanting to share that and it's not the way that you are shaping the story, you either go in a different direction or you might look at another family. All of that takes a lot of time, a lot of development, a lot of pre-interviews. You just don't always get there. You don't always get the story or the dream of sharing that story, and that's okay, but you have to accept that.
Yeah, if you're using a child or a family story as the center of a campaign, I can imagine you have to be extremely selective. It's very sensitive. On the other hand, if we go back to the campaign in which you had the flying doctor, I imagine in some ways is easier because they become the hero. And even though it's not a family at the center of the story, you're able to maybe sprinkle in some things as part of that.
Absolutely. So for Fly for the Kids, we had the most amazing patient families and heroes. We had Axel and Jacob, and they were Andrew's patients. The connection was that they were a family that he had put forward or suggested and has these beautiful relationships with them. So we're able to weave in and out different stories throughout the campaign that we thought would be suited to what people want to hear. For instance, on LinkedIn, we would do a lot of sharing of Andrew, his professional work, what he was doing. On Instagram, we lent into sharing a lot more about Jacob and Axel. We also looked to position them together at events so that people could see through the eyes of our wonderful flying doctor, but also the people that he has really helped treat and do some of this incredible gene therapy with, which is part of the advanced therapies. It just worked beautifully to have them both complementing each other. Professor Andrew Kornberg is a content god. We are so lucky because he had his own GoPro, his own recording suite in his plane. He edited, he sent back to us. I don't think there was a day in July that the team and I did not speak to him and hear about his day or receive incredible videos to be able to cut as part of his captain's log and hear from him with where he was at and the people that he met along the way, including the patient families or a couple that are a population of 2 in a town that he flew into and helped him with a petrol crisis. He's just one of those once in a lifetime type humans, superhuman, amazing. Having him at the center was absolutely what we needed and so well deserved.
It's like finding a diamond if you're able to find a health practitioner who has these stories in real life interactions with patients and children that is media friendly. They have the capacity and the time and the resources to also help get your message out there. Would that be a recommendation that you have for other nonprofits, even though stories are really important from the families that you impact? Also try and find people within your organization who can maybe steer or be the center of some of those campaigns?
Absolutely. I would highly recommend. We onboarded Flourish PR agency and they led all of our media. They also do media training. So we had our CEO as well as Andrew do some bespoke sessions where we had a key set of messages. That is really what we stuck to throughout the entire campaign. And it worked beautifully. Every event that we had media, I always remember out the corner of my eye seeing my CEO with about 5 cameramen or Andrew with all these photographers at the cockpit of his plane getting these photos and having these on the fly interviews. I would just say to the listeners, never underestimate how intimidating it is to speak to media. You could be the most confident person in the world, and as soon as that big bright light and fluffy microphone are hanging over your head and there's a sea of people in front of you, you can absolutely lose whatever you're thinking. So absolutely media training. Doesn't matter who is going in front of the camera, they should be media trained. And it should always, in my opinion, be your CEO, that face of the campaign. That's who the people want to see. They want to see the people that represent these institutions and organisations.
So, what was so compelling about the 2 children you chose for the Flying Doctors?
One of the most compelling parts was the mums and the dads' willingness to share and be vulnerable. The 2 children that we featured still going through treatment. That was really real and relatable. It's not like we waved a wand or treated this one person and they're okay forever. They speak about finding out about their children's genetic conditions as the worst day of their life. Those lines ring in my head all the time when we're filming, and it was heartbreakingly beautiful. One of our beautiful patients, the listeners might know as a mum, when you get that heel prick test when you have a baby on day 3 of their life. So one of the mums, the results from that came back, and that's where they picked up the genetic condition. I am a mum myself, but I cannot imagine after giving birth on the 3rd day of my child's life, hearing that my child has this genetic condition and there might not actually be a way to solve that. There's a lot of visual cues that these beautiful families used and the things their beautiful children missed out on as a result of having these genetic issues or diseases. That's also something relatable and powerful in communicating through your content what you're giving back to these families by donating. Having those visual cues really shone through what they were saying. They were very easy to see and talk about their experience. And for that, we're forever lucky and privileged.
After working on this campaign with Flying Doctor, weaving in those really beautiful stories, What's something out of this campaign that you feel you're going to take away and always apply to your future work?
There's so many things. So many. Probably the best part was our CEO saying, this is an organizational campaign. This isn't just a fundraisers campaign. This is the finance teams, the comms teams, or the grants and impact teams campaign too. We all own this. I'll never forget our CEO said, for the takeoff event, can you go and book a bus? I'm like, why do you need a bus? I shouldn't even ask, but sure. So we booked a bus. What he wanted was to bus our entire organization out to the takeoff event and have our people on the ground hearing from Andrew, not only for them to experience it, but for us to support Andrew. We also mirrored that in the landing event when he landed in July. It was a really rainy, cold morning, and we all went out to Essen Airport and we created a guard of honour. Our CFO was there, our comms director was there, all of our coordinators across all teams were standing and giving him a standing ovation. It makes me emotional sharing it because I think that is what it's all about. It's about not only bringing the people you're communicating to on the journey, but helping the people you work with understand the stakes and be there on the ground. I'll absolutely carry that through in everything that we do at that scale. The whole org doesn't want to know what we're doing for the smaller campaigns in terms of the crux of everything. When you are doing a huge thing, you should bring your team with you and they should be a part of it. They need to come down, help set up the banner, thank the clinician, say hi to the patient families. It's only through that you are going to create a connection. That has been the best thing that came out of this campaign, was having everyone there with us doing it.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds a lot of fun, I have to say, in a great way.
I don't think many people slept for a very long time, but now we look back as just all worth it. It's amazing what you can do when you're all giving something.
We've talked a lot about campaign development and sharing stories, but one thing that always comes up when I talk to nonprofits is compassion fatigue. Is there something that you do in your practice to help overcome this or make sure that you're getting the cut through?
The biggest cut through in my experience so far, and what is really a future trend, is personalization. Gone are the days where you can take a list of 7,000 people and send them the same EDM. People don't respond that way. That speaks to the analysis and the data. What gets people clicking and opening is when they see themselves in something, or it's actually tailored to them and their persona. It's definitely a journey that we're going on and that we're getting better at. For instance, we will have an event that one team might traditionally organise, and how we invite those people or how we speak to the different segments in a tax appeal campaign will all be personalised. And each team and owner of those donor groups really gets a say in what the words are and what it looks like. Personalisation is going to be key as we go into the next 2 or 3 years of fundraising and campaigns.
Can you give an example of what that personalisation looks like? Is it segmentation by age or geographic location or patient versus non-patient?
In terms of an invite, you might tailor it specifically to the kind of branding that you would have for that group. For instance, you might send it to them in their brand identity. So we have donors who give $1,000 a year to research. They have their beautiful colouring, and when they see an email to them, it is their branding. We would be badging it. The first thing they see is their brand identity and go, oh yeah, this is for me. I'm an RCH 1000 donor. This is the email signed by the CEO. We send it out to them as a group. Where you might change that and continue to further personalise is sending it out one-on-one. We know with our incredible 1870 society, anyone leaving a gift in their will may receive so many emails a day due to their demographic or age. That might be very overwhelming. When they see RCH Foundation, we are just a sea of other foundations or ads or corporations emailing them. In that respect, we would have the relationship manager have a special invite as an attachment to an email, and they would personally say, "Dear Bev, we are delighted to invite you on behalf of our CEO to this event." It's still very much from our CEO, but it is coming from the person that they know well. I know all too well there is cyber risks left, right, and centre, clicking on links, etc. When you are emailing an older demographic, you don't want to be a part of that stress of being robbed in daylight. We're not asking for bank details, but we do have links we will share, which would be clicked through to a ticketed event. So how do you make sure that they feel safe opening that email? And it's to see your name on it as opposed to a generic inbox. There's varying levels of personalization. I think that's just one example of how we would broach an event and ensure people feel that personal touch and that we're speaking to you.
One thing I'd love to ask is about when money is tight. We talk about a cost of living crisis. Mix this in with fundraising. It must be really hard to drive donations. So, in that sense, what does success look like to you?
It's all about respect. Philanthropy is cyclical, right? So where people might give to us this year, they might decide that they can't do that and want to support another organisation. Anyone that is giving in Australia is good. So I think that's something that we should all really think about and respect. We really saw this cost of living crisis and COVID really evolve and change the way people give. It's just about understanding where your donors are at and when they can and they can't give to you. And I think it really is as simple as that. If it's something they want to put on hold, or maybe they'd like to give a lesser amount, you still should make them feel just as loved. It doesn't matter if it's $2 or $2 million. You should have absolute respect for anyone that is willing to give you anything at this point, because it is a real tough slog out there. There are some people who are struggling to afford groceries. So the fact that they've given you $5 is incredible and they should be thanked and feel good about it.
Can you recap something we discussed earlier around how you see someone talking about the Children's Hospital Foundation or the hospital at a family barbecue? Like, that itself is a win with no dollars raised, but the conversation's a win.
Success in how you fundraise is such a spectrum. You've got people who give to you every year, or they might come in and out or fundraise for a period of time. If you're giving those people a great experience and they're telling their friends and family about you, that means something. To reach your incredibly generous and dedicated friends and donors really holds a lot of power and spreads the impact and the work that you do. To be a charity of choice is ideal, whether they're donating now or maybe thinking about doing it later is so important. I think that's where Impact in 5 minutes comes in. If you can explain that to your donor to be able to digest and share with their community, then they've got a very simple way of sharing with their friends. Just done a fundraiser for the Royal Children's Hospital. They're going to try and change the future of children's health. My money went to this. Just talking about it inspires people and it creates an ability to share something really simply but impactful.
And just as a final question, if there is another leader from a nonprofit listening on their commute, what's one thing they could focus on today to achieve Impact in 5?
My encouragement would be to bring your team along for the journey, encourage them to fail fast, take smart risks, and really test and try what works for your incredible donor base. That's how you get to impact, actually trying different ways in the first place. I would also ask them to question why and encourage open or 360 feedback of asking their team how they're doing as a leader. So many times we think we know the answer and we actually don't. There are incredible emerging leaders in your organisation right now that I bet have a better answer or another way of doing something. I would encourage all leaders to be curious about that. Go and sit with that person and ask them what they think, because I bet they are most definitely a better idea than you, and you should be engaging. Also, as a leader, you should always be thinking, who's going to sit in my seat in 2 or 3 years' time? how can I harness these people and really build up a workforce to grow? Leadership should be shared, and it shouldn't just sit with you as a person. They may not work for you or your organisations or leadership styles. Be curious and take risks.
And where can people donate to the foundation?
www.rchfoundation.org.au. You can find us there.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.